304 miles through the Arizona desert and finished second place female.
My body didn't have enough energy to push harder. It's tough to lose touch with reality and to be confused about your scenario. I really could not figure out if the whole thing was just a dream or if it was reality. We're coming into the top of Mount Lebanon. I've been like dry heaving my way up the entire climb. Like now I've got about 2,000 milligrams of sodium per liter of water in 2 of my liters. It's basically poison for me. So like you are in a state of dehydration and you keep trying to do the things that you would normally do in a race if you're not dehydrated, and they don't work. Like they're just not working.
What happens when the person who teaches athletes to push through the impossible has to use every single one of those lessons on herself? Today's guest did exactly that. And years ago, she walked away from a decade in the corporate world because she believed people were capable of becoming so much more. How does that translate in story end at mile 304? Let's find out. She's an ultra running coach, a yoga and wellness expert, and a champion of aging athletes, and one of the most passionate advocates for human potential in the endurance world. This spring, she stepped into the Arizona Monster 300 Ultra Marathon that's actually 304 miles through the Arizona desert and finished second place female. Messy, real, and honest from the start to the finish. Welcome to the Embers Rising podcast, Anne Tisdell. I am super stoked you are here. So tell me, how are you showing up with us today? What's your vibe like today?
If I'm being completely honest, I'm tired. I've had kind of a hard time recovering from this race. Like last year, so this year was the second year that I've done this race, and like the sleep deprivation always takes a while to recover from, takes a while to feel sharp and normal again. It's really affected me this time. So it's been like 2 months since the race, and I still feel just tired all the time. So I am excited for this conversation and just the reality of the sport that we do. I also just feel tired, very tired.
Yeah, and how many weeks has it been, I guess, since you finished?
A lot. So race started when March transitioned into April. That's always funny. Like the race started in March, finished in April. So it's been several weeks. I would have to look at a calendar to count, but yeah, it's been longer than I would expect to still feel any kind of lingering fatigue. And you know what? Maybe it's also as soon as I was started to feel totally normal from the monster, head out to Cocodona to crew and pace some runners, and there are a few sleepless nights out there, a red eye on the way back. Maybe I just keep exacerbating the issues by doing these things over and over again as soon as I feel better.
Might be just a little bit. Before we get into the Arizona Monster, and for those who don't know you, I wanted to ask you, I know it's been years, but you did walk away from this corporate world, and I would love for you to share a little bit about that because you believed that people had so much more potential in their life. And I know that you saw that, you felt that even for yourself. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I'll say this. So I worked for out of college, I worked for the same company for almost exactly 8 years, and it was an awesome company. Like you couldn't ask for more. Really great people, friendly, supportive environment, great place to grow in your career, especially as a young adult. And I think the problem I had was I tried a few different roles there, and I just like nothing was ever perfect. The best fit while I was at the company was human resources by a long shot, because I really liked working with people and being a confidant and problem solving, and the tricky conversations like that kind of resonated with me and my personality. But there it just wasn't right. Like I always saw myself in college as the person who would graduate and then work for a big company and eventually work my way up to executive level and be wearing suits every day. Like that is the vision that I had. And it just wasn't working. And then when I left, I will say it's still been a journey. It was really hard to figure out what the right path was. So I literally had a notebook with three different pages, and one was like very realistic, predictable jobs that I could look for. One was totally off the wall, like this sounds awesome, but it's probably not realistic. Like literally joining Cirque du Soleil was on that list. And then in the middle, there was kind of like the happy medium, like this is a bit of a risk. This would be a huge departure from what I've done before, but um, still more realistic perhaps than that third list. And then I just started trying things from the second list. So it started with teaching yoga. And honestly, if you asked me why, I would say because it sounded good. There was just something about me that was drawn to it, and I cannot explain it beyond that anymore. So that's where I started. I also just always have loved being like an active and physical person. So, in addition to yoga, next it was teaching group classes, and then it was personal training, and then I was lucky enough to have this guy, Ryan, who happened to live a few blocks from me, who said, "Hey, um, looks like you're a personal trainer and you've done this ultra marathon thing. I'd like to try that. Like, do you think you could coach me for it since technically you're a trainer of some sort?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know what I'm doing, but I can try." And that was really like, that was the beginning of it. So one year, I helped him with his first 100-mile adventure. The next year, someone else reached out to me for the exact same reason. And then I was like, okay, this is the perfect combination of the coaching and the active lifestyle and all of that stuff that I like, but also the sport that I'm becoming increasingly passionate about too. And here we are, several years later. I think we're finally kind of finding the path.
That's awesome. That is so awesome. All right, well, let's get into it because second place female, things went messy. Take us back to the start line, and how were things rolling that first day? How are things going?
Just for context, like this the second year that I've done this race. The first year I'm at the start line and I was like crying, hugging my husband, just so afraid of, yeah, I was just so overwhelmed by the scope of what I was about to do and the unknown and all of that. And I learned so much from the first year. Like, what are the things that I really need to do better and more of and differently in my training? And so this year, it felt really different. I just had a higher level of confidence, a higher level of comfort. I trusted the training that I had done. I knew I had made a lot of really good changes. And so I felt still nervous. I'm pretty sure I still cried a little bit. I usually do at start lines because I'm just scared and overwhelmed. But I felt better and I felt more comfortable. And I think I settled in more quickly. Usually I kind of hate the first day of racing in these really long races because I like the part when I'm by myself. Like once things spread out and I'm kind of alone for a while, then I feel like I settle into my groove. And there's just something really intimidating about still being around a lot of other runners. And I just feel like very self-conscious until things spread out and I get a little bit of space. So I guess it was a combination of things. At the start line, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling confident, comfortable with my training. Also still just that level of like being self-conscious around so many other like really fit, cool looking people. But that's where we started. And then very quickly things started to break down from there, but we started in a good
You
place.
started in a good place. And did you have crew and pacers with you?
Yeah, so my parents and my husband are kind of my steadfast crew. So they were there. And then I also had two friends who were helping me out as well, both as crew and pacers. So that was actually an intentional change that I made from the year prior, just incorporating an extra pacer for this particularly long section later on in the race when I was alone the first time. And I kind of didn't have my wits about me. And so that was comforting to know too. Once I was going to get a pacer for the first time, I knew I would have one for the rest of the race, which was very comforting.
How do you train for a 300? I mean, I'm just blown away still in my head.
I mean, for if I'm being completely honest, it's not that different than training for a 100-miler, except for the weight of the pack. I mean, some 100 milers, you're going to have a pretty substantial pack. But with a race like this, with a pretty decent amount of miles from aid station to aid station, your pack could easily weigh 12 to 15 pounds, just with the amount of water that you need to carry and the food for all of those sections and your mandatory gear and everything. So, as far as volume goes, I mean, I've trained athletes for 200-mile races who could really only fit the volume that they would have been training for a 100-mile race into their schedule. So I kind of think of it as like 100-miler training and volume and principles are your baseline. If we can go beyond that by a few extra hours per week, especially incorporating some run hikes, and we have to make sure that we're training plenty with the weight of the pack, that's those are the meaningful differences. And if there's one other thing, it's just incorporating more like meals, like real foods into your training compared to maybe what you would do for a 100-miler. But volume wise, just think of if you're training for a 100-miler, that's your starting point. If you can afford a little bit more and some hiking, do that. And then certainly incorporate the real food, certainly incorporate the weight of the pack, because those really change the dynamic of the race too.
That's great. Okay, so getting back into it, this first day, how are you doing? Or do you have a pacer at this point? How many miles? Where are you now on this first day?
So you see your crew for the first time. It was like around mile 73 or 75 or something like that. So you basically, when you're leaving the starting line, you're like, okay, bye crew, I'll see you tomorrow. Like it's just what it is. So going into those first 73, 75 miles, like this is you have a drop bag or two and that's it. And I think things started off really well. So I knew what my level of effort needed to be. I knew how to pace myself. I knew not to feel pressured by what's happening around me, like the pace of other runners, etc. Um, the problem was the second section of the race I think it was 22 miles long, and it was very, very, very hot. I knew it was going to be hot. I heat trained. I was prepared for that. I thought that I had enough water for that long section just based on my typical sweat rate and my typical drinking rate, all of the above. And I was just drinking so much more than I ever would have anticipated, more than I've probably ever drank per hour in any race or any training run ever in my life. So it was just unforeseen, even though I did my best to kind of prepare for everything. So what happens is, I mean, second section of the race, it's still the first day. It's like in the 90s, really hot. And I realize with like about halfway through that 22-mile section that I am already running really low on my water. So at that point, I realized, okay, we're in a bad situation. Like, I do not have enough to appropriately drink for the remaining hours until I get to this next aid station. So, what I need to do is drink everything from my bladder, drink one bottle, and then hold this bottle for last. And then this is the one that I'm going to need to just really conserve for the remainder of this section. And ultimately, I did run out of water. There was a really nice runner that I ran into at one point, and I took like one tiny sip of his water, and I still have so much regret about that. But it was so kind of him to offer it. And so ultimately got into aid station number 2 very early in the race, just behind. So this was day one. This was the day one experience. Paced myself well, started off feeling pretty good. And by the second long, hot section of the race, I realized, wow, like despite all of the really diligent planning that I've done and all the thought that was put into it, I don't have enough, and I'm going to be going into night one with a pretty big deficit.
Wow. And what mile was this?
So let's see. The first section was pretty short. So I think we're getting around like close to the 50K mark at this point when you get to that second aid station.
So did you end up refueling there, hydrating there, resting there? Because you're not yet with your crew at this point.
Yeah, I had a plan for how long I was originally going to stay at that aid station, and I just said like, forget that. I'm going to take the extra time that I need. And I sat down and just slowly drank like 7 big cups of whatever sounded good. So there was Fanta, there was Coke, there was Sprite, there was broth, there was plain water. I figured like if I'm craving it, then that's a good sign that this is the kind of thing I need right now. And I actually, by drinking plenty but slowly, eating a little bit of food and just taking my time and resting, I felt great by the time I left that aid station. And I really feel like I kind of caught up for the time being until things went wrong again later.
Yeah. Okay, so now you've left that aid station and you're headed back out, and is this still are you is it at night yet?
Still daytime, but it's all such a blur, I've got to tell you. I think night was coming. Night was on the way, but it was still daylight when I left that aid station.
Okay, okay, still daylight. So now you're moving to the next aid station, and that's probably where you're picking up your crew at that point.
There were at least 1 or 2 more in there. So there was still some time because I didn't see my crew until the morning of day 2. So there was still a full night to get through, just kind of figuring things out on.
And did things smooth out then for this next, 3rd or 4th aid station?
Yeah, the night went pretty well. I was feeling good. I was drinking what I would expect to be drinking. I made sure after that point, every aid station, because I had this little like cheat sheet in my pocket with exactly how much water I planned to leave every aid station with, because it's impossible to remember. Um, and so after that experience in that second section, I made sure I left every aid station with even more than what I had on my little list, just to make sure it didn't happen again. It was good. It was a good night, and I came into the first crew aid station, day 2, just feeling good, feeling excited to see them, and just physically like in a really good place.
And I'm sure they were excited to see you, and you guys are regrouping, and
Yeah, things were in a good place at that point. We had recovered from like the initial mistake that I had made.
okay, so it doesn't sound like it's gotten too messy yet. Now this is like what, probably mile 70, 73, or 5 in here?
Yeah, it's coming.
It's
It's
coming.
coming.
Okay, so now you've seen the crew and now you're moving on to the
Mhm.
2nd full day. What's happening
Yep.
next?
I have no idea. I literally I do not know. I
Did you
couldn't
pick
tell
up a
you.
pacer at that point?
No, not until mile 100. So, see my crew for the first time, all is good. Do about another 50K, and then it's time to see your crew and pick up Pacer, my husband, for the first time. As far as what happened during day 2, I don't know. I have like maybe if I look back at the aid station chart, I'll be able to come up with some memories of it, but oh, I remember it was really windy. So there was a time going over this mountain pass on that first night when it was so windy that it was blowing my eyelids closed. And I was having to come up with this new strategy with my poles where I would kind of swing them around the side and plant them, because if I just moved them forward, my arms would get kicked off to the side. It was wildly windy. I remember coming into the last aid station before the crew aid station. Um, and literally, like if you set something down, it would just blow off into the distance. Like the poor people at that aid station, they were having to anchor things down, and like if they tried to hand me a bag of chips, like it's gone, it's totally gone. That's all I've got for you. That's all I really remember until Mount Lemon. Mount Lemon is where the memories become much more clear, because that's where things started to get really messy. I believe it was in the 90s for the majority of the race. I think it cooled down a little bit as we went along. And some of the nights were really pleasant, actually. So it kind of became like live for the night because you know you're going to feel better then, but just expect it's like ice bandana, anything you can possibly do to keep yourself cool during the day.
And now by the time you get to Mount Lemon, is this the place where you're feeling like, okay, this isn't going as planned? Did you start recognizing this?
There was a very distinct thing that happened that turned things around. So, approaching the aid station right before Mount Lemon, things feel good, still running. I'm with my husband, like we're having a great time. I'm excited for Mount Lemon because I've done it one time before. I know what to expect. I like climbing. So, things are in a really good place at that point. And then a very silly thing happened. So my husband, who is super, super helpful, he's like the ultimate pacer and crew. He puts my drink mix in my bladder for me. And then later I go to fill up my bladder and I put my drink mix in the bladder and I fill it up and leave and I have no idea that I've just doubled the concentration of the drink mix that I have back there. And it's maybe an hour after leaving the aid station. Like I couldn't taste too much of a difference, but I started feeling kind of off. And then I start noticing like maybe this tastes a little bit different than usual. And then I vaguely remember seeing him at one point put drink mix in my bladder, but I'm tired at that point. Like you forget things easily. And we start talking about it and we realize what happened. And then we realize, okay, this is not good. Like now I've got about 2,000 milligrams of sodium per liter of water in two of my liters. And I have bottles in the front that are the appropriate amount of drink mix, the right amount of sodium and everything. But those 2 liters, like that's a big part of my hydration for this really hard section. And it's basically poison for me. So we had a conversation. We're still moving forward. And we're talking like, well, what would be worse to get way over on sodium, but stay hydrated? And then just know, like, I'm going to have to correct this later. And one of the bigger symptoms would be some serious GI issues. So, okay, that's one scenario. Other scenario is I don't drink from the bladder. I just drink from my remaining bottles. I don't get off on sodium, but I do end up really dehydrated. Um, and we kind of decided, like, well, let's just try drinking normally and just see how my body's reacting. And unfortunately, it got to the point where I would take a sip from my bladder and immediately just start dry heaving. And so then we've got the problem where it's like, well, okay, I have precious little stuff in my system at this point. I really don't want to throw it up. I don't want to throw up the water I have in my system. I don't want to throw up the food I have in my system. So I really slowed down my drinking and I still tried to take occasional sips out of the bladder, um, to the point where, like, as much as I could without immediately vomiting. And that's just where we were. So at the end, at the end of that section, we're coming into the top of Mount Lemon. I've been like dry heaving my way up the entire climb. And once again, so now I get into the next aid station dehydrated and also just over on sodium. So now we've got another hydration problem to fix. But this one is not like poor planning. It was not underestimating my drinking rate. It was not like underestimating my sweat rate. It was just the silliest little thing that could have literally happened to anybody. Like two people working on the same hydration bladder at the same time and just not realizing that we doubled down on the drink mix. Just a silly thing.
I mean, that's just such a simple thing, but wow, such a long time that you have to go in between to not have that you where you probably didn't need that concentrated.
Yep.
What mile were you at, I guess, at the next aid station then to try to correct that, and how did you correct that?
I think this is around the halfway point of the race. So, and I'm approximating, because I don't really like looking closely at aid station tables and when things are happening in these really long races. But it's around the halfway point. And so I come into the aid station knowing, all right, we've got to correct some stuff. So once again, we're going to extend the break that we planned on taking here. So I can lay down, I can drink some plain water, I can try to catch up, maybe sleep a little bit. I tried to take a short nap. Um, in retrospect, if I really wanted to fix the problem, I should have stayed at that aid station for multiple hours. Like I should have stayed there for 4 or 5 hours and I should have been drinking some plain water, maybe try to eat a little bit of food, take a substantial sleep, wake up, drink some more plain water, and just really make sure my system is reset or close to it before leaving. I was not willing to do that, because I did, there is a kind of competitive side to me, and I knew things were going relatively well, and I just didn't want to lose that much time. That's the bottom line. So I did what I could to feel better and correct things in the scope of maybe it was like an hour that we spent there. And then I was like, okay, let's go, and I'll keep fixing this on the road, which is a pretty difficult thing to accomplish. And it's like it just spiraled from there. Um, because I was so dehydrated and just kind of off on everything, I felt really dizzy going down the descent from Mount Lemmon. And anyone who's done that knows it's steep and it's rocky, it's technical, it's loose. You kind of have to have your wits about you. So I'm just a bit of a mess for that next section, but still like doing the right things. I am drinking now. I'm like still staying on top of my carbs as much as I can. I'm doing my best, trying to stay cool. And I think just the entire rest of the race became a game of hydration. Like you are in a state of dehydration and you keep trying to do the things that you would normally do in a race if you're not dehydrated and they don't work. Like they're just not working. And I just didn't have enough nutrition hydration options. And I really kept trying too hard to stick with my usual plan, where I just ultimately I needed to pivot entirely. And now if I were to go back and do it all again for the second half of that race, now I have ideas for what we could do differently. But there was a lot of just trying to figure it out along the way.
What would have you done differently? What would be your advice if this happens to somebody?
In the course of the second half of the race, I basically got into such a state of it was like chronic dehydration and being slightly over on sodium. And what I should have done was switch to drinking entirely plain water. Ideally, I would have had a carb drink mix that didn't have any sodium or was very low in sodium so I could continue drinking at the rate I needed, still getting the liquid carbs that I like. That is what works the best for me in this kind of environment. But just allow my system to catch up on hydration and not overdo it on the sodium. That is what I would have done. Um, and again, if I had been willing to take a really long break at some point to drink water and really fix the problem and rest, that could have changed everything. But even in retrospect, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't take that long break. I would just focus more on water, use a drink mix that had carbs and no sodium, and stop trying to force because usually my liquid carbs are pretty high in sodium. And I kept trying to force it. Like I kept trying to use those, even a diluted version. Um, because I knew that I needed liquid carbs. That's the way that I stay on top of it. Yes, I had gels, I had other stuff, but that's a critical part of my nutrition plan. And I kept trying to force it, and that just kept exacerbating the issue, if that makes sense. To the point where I just really wasn't digesting anything anymore. I if I ate something, I could feel it collecting in this hard ball in my stomach, which was both really uncomfortable, but also just a sign that like I'm not absorbing things effectively from the food that I'm eating, and instead it's collecting here and it feels bad, and it's just not working. Plain water, that would have helped. Rest, that would have helped. Not forcing the sodium, like, via the carb-based drink mix that I usually drink, that would have helped. So, the all of these things that now I know in retrospect that maybe I could have tweaked versus just continuing to try to use the same products that I would typically use. I was too far off. My system was way too far off to use any of those things any more effectively.
It's crazy not knowing any of this. We are binging and watching your tracker. We have no idea what you're experiencing and going through. We're just like, is she moving? The dot's still moving, and then it would stop for a while. And so we have no, and so just to hear all this is just absolutely, incredible. You're coming down Mount Lemon. Is there an aid station now down at the bottom once you make it out of that?
Yeah, I've got a pacer with me. We get to the bottom Mount Lemon. We hit a great aid station. They give me some plain water. Eat some oranges, like leaving pretty good spirits. And I think the problem is just for the duration of the rest of the race, I would have these moments where I'm drinking plenty of plain water. I'm starting to feel better. I start to go back towards the stuff I would usually do, the drink mix I would usually use, the gels that I would usually use. And then it's like, okay, reverse all that progress. And then get into a hole, okay, drink some more water, feel better, go back to the products I would usually use, totally reverse all of that progress. It was like a kind of a constant yo-yo effect until the point where my stomach just was like really shutting down. And then after that point, I basically ate practically nothing for the rest of the race. And I'll say this, the best thing that one of my pacers said to me at one point, this is when like we realized, okay, your stomach, like we've got a problem. She was like, okay, here's the reality. When I was telling her about this hard ball of stuff in my stomach, she's like, here's the reality. Your stomach is no longer effectively digesting these carbs. So when you're eating things, it's going in there and it's just hanging out, and it's not going to make you feel better. You're not going to be using the energy effectively. Um, and if you keep doing that, it's likely going to make this feeling in your stomach worse. So, like, here's what's going to happen. You're going to sip on things as much as you can. Try to sip like continuously on a little bit of liquid carbs so you've got some kind of energy coming in, and you're going to bonk, and you're going to bonk really hard. And at this point, unless you take a big break, there's nothing we can do about it. And so that is your reality for the rest of this race. And that to me was like, okay, all right, this is where we're at. I'm not willing to take that really long break. So, this is what the rest of this race is going to be like. I'm going to try to get the teeniest little bits of carbs here and there, and I'm going to drink my plain water and drink other things that I'm craving. And I'm just going to bonk for the rest of the race. And that is that. That's the reality. And then we'll fix this problem once the race is over.
That's crazy just because, I mean, this is what you coach your other athletes on, and now, you're it's like you're needing this at the same time because 'cause you're on the other side trying to get this corrected. So, wow, I guess just needing to hear that and then having to accept it and start moving through, that's you're just moving through now.
Yeah, I think we just needed the reality check. Like, okay, unless you're willing to take a substantial enough break to actually fix this, this is what you're going to have to do for the rest of the race. And this is how you're going to feel for the rest of the race. And I chose option two. And I would choose it again for myself personally with what I was trying to accomplish there. And it was kind of, it was almost a relief to know, like, all right, this sucks and it's going to suck for the rest of the race. And all right, that's where we're at. So let's get it done.
So you are now down pat you're down off of Lemon. I think you're now what, on that paved pathway now for a while?
Yeah, you have the bike path for quite a while. And this conversation was after the bike path. I think the section pretty soon after the bike path. So now, like at this point, we're in the last 80-ish miles of the race. Um, but the storyline has been relatively consistent through there. It's, you know, you hit a hydration issue, start to fix it, and then think everything's fine, go back to your normal habits, regress. Fix it, go back to your normal habits, regress. To the point where you just can't regress any farther. And then we survive.
So is anything getting worse? Is anything getting better at this point, at this 80 miles left?
Nothing is getting worse other than just, I'm running out of energy because I just don't have enough fuel. That was the biggest thing. I was moving more slowly than I wish I could have. I was feeling more tired than I wish I would have. And it's just because I was running out of energy and I was doing my best to replace it tiny bits at a time, little sips of this and, sips of a liquid goo, whatever I could get in. But I couldn't catch up and I wouldn't catch up unless I took a break and, solved all of those problems. So it was just slower and I was tired. Um, that it was just that. But it really didn't get worse. So yeah, I slept. It's hard to say for sure. Um, my plan was to have a good like 90-minute sleep every day in the race after the first full day. And for the most part, I think that's pretty much what we stuck with until the very, very last aid station, which is only 15 miles from the finish, which at that point feels very close. I was not planning on taking a sleep break there. I was switching back to my husband as my pacer. We were just going to eat some food, clean things up, and then just get the thing done. But I came into that aid station feeling really delirious. And so I ended up staying there way longer than expected, which was my crew's choice. They got me in the back of our car, put me to sleep, They woke me up at the planned time, and when I clearly wasn't ready to continue, they made the executive decision. All right, just go back to sleep. And I didn't even realize it. I think I was there for 2 or 3 hours or something without realizing it. So a little more sleep than I anticipated, probably maybe like 4 to 5 hours total over the course of the race, including that last big break.
And what mile are you at now with did you sleep at any time between the 80 miles left?
So at a little like 2 minute trail nap at one point. So basically, 24 hours of the race or so, no sleep. I didn't need it at all, and then pretty consistent, like 60 to 90 minutes per day as we continue through the race. Um, a few really short trail naps along the way, and then just that slightly more substantial sleep. Final aid station. I couldn't tell you how long it was, but I'm thinking it was like an hour and a half, maybe ish.
Wow. And is this your darkest moment at that point?
That's an interesting question. I'm gonna say, I've been in more pain in races before. Like, I think the previous year, my feet, which weren't even as bad as this year, like there were moments where they just hurt so bad. And I was lonely because I didn't have pacers. And I was sad because I was away from my family and my husband for so long because they didn't have as many pacers. I think there were some darker moments in that race. It was different this time because if I'm being totally honest, I got so delusional by the last like 50 miles that it wasn't really like I don't really remember pain. I don't remember discomfort. I remember being tired and I remember confusion. So it's just really different. It's different to for the bigger challenges to be trying to maintain a grasp on reality versus the bigger challenges being like lots of pain in your feet and loneliness and stuff like that. It was just a really different experience. I mean, I was delusional to the point where, as Tyler is pacing me for these final 15 miles, I would be like, okay, Tyler, if I lay down and I go to sleep, will I wake up in this same place? Are we going to be on the trail and are you going to be here? Or am I going to be like in my bed? Like, I really could not figure out if the whole thing was just a dream or if it was reality. And he was smart. He was like, try it. Go ahead. I'll set a timer, lay down, go to sleep for 5 minutes. And then let's see where you are when you wake up. And I was still there. Um, I know that's such an indirect answer to your question, but it was just different. It was dark in the sense that it's very it's tough to lose touch with reality and to be confused about your scenario. It wasn't dark from the sense that anything like really hurt or I was in a bad mood. It wasn't that at all. It was just, I was really my body was tired and my mind was tired. Those were the two big things.
Was there a moment that you just had to laugh at yourself in all of this?
I did actually find the humor in doubling the drink mix at that aid station because I was thinking, wow, as I'm like dry heaving my way up Mount Lemon on this really hard climb, I could appreciate the humor in it. I was like, this is so ridiculous. What a silly thing to happen at that last aid station that is now causing me to like retch my way up this mountain. So I could actually appreciate the humor in that scenario. And then after the fact, once the race is done and everything, just looking back and just thinking about what my mindset was in that last section with Tyler. Like now we can joke about the fact that I was asking him like, "Hey, are you going to be here if I take a nap and then I wake up?" Um, so I can see the humor in it. And honestly, so the biggest, I like to set process goals and mantras for every race. My mantra and my number one process goal for this race was relentless positivity. Like that was what I wanted the theme of the race to be. And I told my parents and I told my husband and I told my two other pacers. So everybody knew. And there were times I remember like Brittany, one of my pacers, I swear, like as things were getting really dark, she was like, remember, relentless positivity. I was like, okay, all right, let's carry on. I can't eat, and I'm like desperately trying to drink, and I'm really slow right now, and I'm pretty tired, but okay, relentless positivity. Let's keep this train moving forward.
That did get you to the finish line, and I do remember you and Tyler standing underneath the finish line banner sign. Did you know at that point the work was done, or were you still in the delirium state?
Yes and no. Yes and no. Like that final tiny little road section coming into the finish line, I was literally saying to Tyler, "Why are you making me do things that hurt? Why are you making me do this?" Just not quite comprehending like we are going to the finish line of the race, like you have to be doing this right now. And then literally at the end, when you see me like looking up at the banner, he's like, "Okay, like this is it. Now you can be done." And it was registering like 50%. Um, but at some point, like once you get to take your shoes off and sit by the fire and eat some pizza, then you realize, okay, I'm pretty sure this is done now. Like I think that we are officially done and I don't have to put those shoes back on.
Well, I've gotta read something that you wrote, on your intake form because I think it goes along with this whole experience. You say, "Sometimes you go into these races more fit, more prepared, more mentally strong than ever. On paper, everything is in place, but the universe has different plans, and you need to roll with the punches. Sometimes even experienced ultra runners and coaches make silly mistakes. Have a sense of humor and always be kind, especially in the dark moments." When you were out there, what part of that did you need to hear the most? Was it just the relentless positivity?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Because there was this point, I go into the race with a goal of doing better than the first time. And on paper, I should have done that. Like I was fitter, I had trained better, I had trained more, I had trained smarter, I was mentally prepared for it. Like basically everything on paper said you should have a better race than you did last time. And then when things happen and you realize that's not what's going to happen, it would be easy to get really upset by that and really frustrated by that. And we just had to decide, okay, let's shift goals. Like I reached a point where I just couldn't push harder. Like my body didn't have enough energy to push harder. So our goal was, okay, let's finish the race. Like let's finish the race and maybe try to have the best time possible that you can while moving slower than you want to be and not hitting your time goal and not getting maybe the ranking that you would hope for. So yeah, I think being willing to shift goals mid race when it becomes clear for whatever reason that things are not going to go as planned. I think you really need to be willing to do that if you want to make the most of the race experience. And I'm glad that we were able to do that.
That's such a positive mindset. I love that. I think it's hard to do that, when you have already the goal set in place and then having to shift when you're out there and adjust when that's frustrating and you're tired and you're trying to make that next move and then readjust the goal. So I love that. Nutrition hydration. Do you have any tips for us?
The biggest thing that I have learned from this, well, I'll say it's like one lesson, but in two parts. You've got to have a lot of flexibility with your nutrition hydration options. So I did. I had multiple drink mixes. I had tons of different gels and gummies and more savory foods. Like I had all of the things. But what I didn't have was an ability to get carbs in easily if I needed to dramatically reduce my sodium. I just didn't have an option for that. And so immediately the first thing I did after the race was buy a drink mix that has carbs and no sodium. So if I'm ever in the situation again where I know I need to be shifting my hydration strategy, it's not automatically going to impact my nutrition strategy. And yes, of course, I put a ton of thought into that, and I thought I had all of the options I could possibly need, but this was one scenario I didn't account for. So have options that allow you to scale hydration individually, nutrition individually, and sodium individually. So that's one. Also, yeah. I was just going to say also somebody that I work with said this recently. Basically, you can have the best nutrition plan ever and it means absolutely nothing if your hydration is off. So this experience really helped to reinforce that. If you reach the point of dehydration, where you just are not absorbing your carbohydrates effectively, yeah, great. You've got your 60 to 90 grams of carbs an hour, but you can't like it's not going to work. You've got to fix the hydration in order for the nutrition to be effective. So
That's really good advice. Gear, anything that saved you or let you down out there?
well, that's a good question. Um, I'm pretty meticulous about my gear. Just always, I've been in enough scenarios where something goes wrong and you're out there longer than you expect. Like I had plenty of emergency calories. I had plenty of like different nutrition options in my pack, which couldn't use for various reasons, but I had planned for all the scenarios. And really, it was good. None of my gear failed me, and I wouldn't change anything about what I was carrying, what I was wearing. So I ended up getting a 20-liter Solomon pack. And I'm glad I had all of that space too, because it really let me put, the extra layer in and just a few extra safety things with plenty of space in the pack and plenty of space to carry. Usually I was closer to 4 liters of water, but I easily could have had 5, maybe even 6 liters of water just with the extra space in the back.
One song that got you through.
Oh, a song that got me through. Okay, so we have a playlist that Tyler and I made, and we call it the Monster Mash because we made it for the Arizona Monster the year prior. Um, And that is there's not a distinct song that stands out, but it's a mix of there's like some kind of ska and reggae in there, like some Dirty Heads and Sublime. There's also like Doja Cat, and I really like the like hardcore, like female hip hop rapper kind of music in those scenarios, like put your head down and just grind to the finish, that sort of thing. But it's got a mix.
I love it. Okay. Anything else you want to share with us on this incredible experience?
Yeah. Honestly, the thing that I was not proud of the outcome of this race. It wasn't the time I wanted, it wasn't the rank that I wanted. I was honestly pretty disappointed in how things went. But I'm really, really proud of working through some major challenges and a lot of discomfort, and really sticking to that mantra of relentless positivity. Like, I'm proud of how I interacted with people at aid stations. I'm proud of how I interacted with my crew and my pacers. Um, the only thing I regret is like taking that one sip of water from that very nice guy in that 22-mile section. Um, because then in retrospect, I was like, wow, would I have done that for another runner? Absolutely. I wouldn't even question it. But I don't want to feel like I took something away from anybody else who was out there who may have needed it. So that's like the only regret that I have in the entire race. I really do. But other than that, I feel really proud of my interactions with the people around me, and that's probably one of the most important things for me. And I learned a lot from this race. And I'm sure fellow coaches might listen to this and be like, "Wow, you did some really stupid things. Like you should know better." Um, and like I don't know, yes, but also there were some unanticipated things that happened and some silly things that happened that were nobody's fault. And so we learned from it.
I'm really proud of you. I mean, this is the second time you've done this race. The fact that you had the positivity to make it through and you just continued dialing up everything you could with what you had to work with, and you're amazing. I mean, second place finish is no joke, and that's such a big race and so much time on feet, and you're putting yourself through so much, and I just think it's a humbling space to be, and it teaches us so much. And just from what you shared today, I just can't imagine it. Hopefully it'll inspire others too to get out there and just try and do your best. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it might be messy. Um, but if you just make the smartest decisions you can in the moment and you keep trying, and you keep being nice to the people who are around you, helping you, what more can you do? Also, huge kudos to my crew and my pacers. They did such a good job of helping me problem solve and, taking care of me, and also knowing, like, I'm sure they were watching me. I know I talk lightly about getting delusional and, kind of hallucinating at the end. I don't take it lightly. Like, that can be very serious. And they did a really good job of, like, just watching me and never actually, like, physically helping me with everything, making sure that I was still capable of doing this thing safely on my own, under my own power. But I don't know, I feel like I had a lot of, like, little angels around me helping me out throughout that race. I'm very grateful for that.
That's awesome. I know that I didn't sleep through those 5 days practically myself, watching that little dot on the screen, so
The tracker, refresh the
refresh,
tracker.
refresh, refresh. All right, so last question, where can people find you or maybe even work with you?
That's such a funny question because you know me well enough. The answer is, like, nowhere. You can find me in West Virginia, but I don't I don't have a website. I don't have social media. Those are all conscious decisions. So I'm kind of difficult to track down. But you can find me on the Training Peaks website. You can find me through CTS. That's the company that I coach for. And you can certainly find me out on the trails here in the New River Gorge in West Virginia. Um, that's where you can find me. And then soon in Colorado, we're going to go spend some time out there here soon.
That's great. Yes, you can come to the west side over here. I'm excited. But I don't know, you'll be when are you coming down here?
Next week, we start the drive next week. We're going to pack up the hound dogs and head out west.
That's so great. I'll be in Tahoe and you'll be in Colorado. So that's so cool.
There are worse places to be.
Well, thank you, Anne. This has been so fabulous. I love it. What a great conversation. I love that you're my coach as well. You do a fantastic job and super excited with the progress we've made together. You're just amazing. Thank
And
you.
if you wonder why before your next race, I'm like, okay, what is your hydration plan? How much are you carrying? Let's do more sweat tests, more sweat tests. Now you know where that comes
Okay,
from.
I'll keep that in mind. Thank you, Anne, so much for being here. I appreciate you.